Hey everyone, my name is Connor with Chronicle Creative, and in this video I'm going to talk to you about how I won an Emmy in my mid-20s and ways to sign up and enter your work to be qualified and possibly win Emmys too. So I won that award for a piece I did while I was working in journalism. I was a reporter and anchor for 3 years at a small TV station in Eastern Kentucky. And in the station's 30 or 40 years, they'd only had 3 people win Emmys, and I was lucky enough to be one of those people. Now, I'm going to talk to you about how I went about doing that, how I went about applying, how we went about getting it entered, and the thought process behind the story. But first, I want to show you the story just to show you that the work you may submit may not be perfect. When I look back at this compared to what I do now, it's stuff that I find very mediocre. The videography, the editing was all somewhat mediocre, and even some of the on-camera skills. I'm being super critical of myself, but just take a look at the video that I entered and won that Emmy with.
So let's move in.
We've all more than likely sat down at some point this week and watched one of the governor's daily news conferences. Every time we're told about how crucial our role is in flattening the curve.
And as we know, we expect more cases.
But how though? How can one person play a vital role in stopping the spread? Well, take this guy for example. We'll call him Junior. Junior here just got back from a trip, and he doesn't know it now, but he actually has the novel coronavirus. He just won't start showing symptoms for another 3 to 7 days. In some cases, he might not even show symptoms for about 2 weeks. In epidemiology, the rate of how quickly a virus spreads is called the virus's R-naught. COVID-19 has an R-naught of 2.2. Now, for the sake of this, we're just going to round that down to 2. But what that essentially means is that for every person that has COVID-19, they're more than likely going to pass it on to 2 people. Now, let's get back to Junior. He decides to ignore social distancing guidelines and hang out with some friends now that he's back in town. Junior not showing any symptoms unknowingly spreads that to 2 people, since the R-naught is 2. Now this is where the curve comes into play. Those 2 people Junior infected will each infect 2 other people. Then those 2 will infect 2, that's 4. Those 4 will infect 2, that's 8. 8 becomes 16, then 32, 64, and that number just keeps multiplying until thousands are infected. And while Junior and many of these other folks are healthy and young, Mama over here is not. And now she has COVID-19. Her granddaughter unknowingly gave it to her, and her granddaughter doesn't really even know Junior. Now here's what flattening the curve means. Let's say these 4 folks social distanced properly, washed their hands, and took all the necessary steps to stay healthy. Now take a look. All these people may not need to use hospitals or even get tested because they avoided it. Now Mama never even came in contact with someone that had it. Social distancing helps spread the cases out over time so there won't be a huge spike, so that there will be enough beds and supplies in local hospitals for people who are like Mama and need it. And here's just some food for thought. Not that some of these folks wouldn't get the coronavirus from someone else, but look what would have happened if as soon as Junior got back, he isolated himself for a couple weeks. Exactly. He stopped and slowed the spread. Now again, one of the things that's important to note is that wasn't perfect. You can see things that could probably be improved, whether it comes to editing, visuals, sound, and whatnot. But what's really important is the creativity behind it. One of the things that I saw with the people that won those Emmys, and these are regional Emmys, these aren't national. I'm not going up against Leonardo DiCaprio, as some of my family members may have thought. These are regional Emmys. I entered this in the Ohio Valley chapter of the Emmys, and I went up against other TV stations in the area, independent media companies, and so on. So one of the things that I really want to talk about is that creativity aspect. I noticed a lot of the winners were people who went above and beyond to tell a story more visually appealing or really out of the box. These stories were maybe something that was super basic, you know, for example, that Lego story. It was stopping the spread of COVID through social distancing. Now, the way we did that, though, was we presented it in a new way, in a way to minimize harm and not fearmonger, but in a way to also tell that story visually appealing in a way that could relate to everyone. And I noticed a lot of people that were winning these Emmys, especially in some of these subcategories, were not winning because of necessarily, I mean, the substance played a role, but the way they could tell the story creatively was important. And one of the things I also want to mention is when you're applying to these regional Emmys, to really look at the category and decide what is the best fit for your story. Now, for that Lego story talking about social distancing, we figured health, the health category is really where we wanted to focus in. And telling a story in that category is not necessarily always easy. A lot of the times it's just sit downs with doctors or patients or someone who had the illness. But finding a new way to tell the story and thinking outside of the box is really what's going to, in my opinion, help score you those points that can win you that Emmy. Now, a lot of it does come down to substance too, making sure that all your facts are correct, all the information you have is correct, and really telling the story honestly and ethically is going to matter too. But when you apply for these categories, go in and look at the different qualifications that need to be met in these categories. And one of the things I'll also mention is think about the work you've done and if you think other organizations can produce something similar or have produced something similar. If you think they possibly have, I mean, if you think yours is standout, still by all means apply. But if you think what you have is truly unique, that's what's going to help you. Now, what I really want to note is on these websites, like these regional Emmy websites, it's really easy to download the lists of these categories and go through and look at them. Now, my TV station thankfully entered that story for me. A lot of the times there is not a lot of times, all the times there is a cost involved with entering a story to win an Emmy. And if you're working at a local TV station or maybe some sort of organization that wants to enter and you want to enter their piece, talk to them about having them cover those fees, because a lot of the time, if you think a story is good and you can bring notoriety to the station or the organization, they'll go ahead and cover those fees for you. Overall, the most important thing is to just truly focus on storytelling. Taking your viewer from one point to another in an entertaining way and doing so in an ethical way, in a way that doesn't manipulate them. Sometimes having a little bit of fun or showing them some really compelling visuals, graphics, whatever it may be, is a great way to tell the story. But at the end of the day, really focus on taking your viewer from one point to another and finding a very unique way to do it. And then go ahead, look at those categories you can enter them in, and that will really help lay the roadmap for how you can enter and possibly win an Emmy. I hope this helps you understand it just a little bit. I'm going to throw on some on-screen paperwork from the Ohio Valley Emmy Association, just that shows what you can look for in your specific area for your Emmy organization. Hope this helps. If you have any questions, feel free to comment them, and I'll see what I can do to help.